Joye, Johnston, Heide, and I was born and raised in Blue Island. Lived on Greenwood Avenue with my grandparents until I was 7. We moved over to Maple Avenue, and I went to Greenwood School and lived there until I was married in 1950. We stayed in the area until we moved to California in 1956. This is my daughter, Lindsay, on my right, and Kara on my left. Lindsay was born in Harvey, Illinois, and Kara is our California girl. She was born in Santa Ana, California. And I am a Luchtemeyer granddaughter. My grandfather, George Luchtemeyer, had the jewelry store, and his father before him. And I worked in the store for many years. We all had our turn. And he was a fantastic watchmaker. He was watch inspector for the Rock Island and the Indiana Harbor. And the railroad men with their watches would come in every 2 weeks to have the watches timed against the big regulator that was in the store. And I don't remember just how many seconds it had to be off, but if they were off too far, then the watches had to come in for repair. So we enjoyed that. The railroads always had a nice history to talk about, and we had many, many fun times in the store. The jewelry store originally was in the little red brick building to the south of the present building, and in later years that became Ann Horn's Barber Shop, and the jewelry store had many years before been moved to the big gray stone building. And my grandfather George was also an optometrist, and this was his case of glasses that he would fit. And the Grandma and Grandpa lived on New Street, right around the corner. And then in later years, after my grandfather died, my aunt and my uncle, Wanda and Elmer Mangold, ran the business for a number of years until they closed the store recently. It was a fascinating business. We all loved it, and I miss having it in Blue Island. After the store was built, it was called the Jewel, which it still remains to this day. The lettering is still on the top of the building. And it was a 3-story building. And upstairs on the 2nd floor, there was a big lodge hall, and that was the Masonic Lodge. And that was started by my great-grandfather. And they had meetings up there for years. In later years, it was a church. And there was another rental in the front, and now it's been made into apartments. So it's still a useful building. My grandfather, it was, as I said before, a railroad inspector, and when he wanted to go on vacation, why the train coming from Chicago, rather than him going to Chicago, would stop to pick him up in Blue Island. And that was always quite a affair. We were always very pleased about that. Most of us were raised in the store. My mother and my aunt used to come up and relieve my grandfather for lunch, and he'd walk home to Greenwood Avenue, have his dinner, and come back. And as a baby, why, my mother would take me along in the buggy, and I'd stay in the back room until she was relieved to come home. So we've got quite a history in that building, and it was always fun, and we had a great time. Christmas time, the store was always open till 11 o'clock on Christmas Eve, and then after that we would go over to my great-grandma's house on New Street, and we'd have Christmas Eve and presents and lots of fun there. And the table was always filled with lots of food. There'd be so many people, sometimes we'd eat in shifts. So I have quite a fond memory of Blue Island and the store.